I never believed that I would be the victim of an HOA dictator. But life is full of curveballs when you don't expect them. My name is Jordan, and this is the amazing story of how my neighbor, Karen the HOA president, in her own mind, chose my front door as the ideal place to put her bike, and how it proved to be her undoing. It was a Tuesday morning, and I was already late for a very important work meeting. I had packed my laptop case keys and coffee to rush out the door, only to realize that I was unable to open it no more than a few inches. Something was obstructed in it from outside. I pushed more, thinking that maybe the door was jammed, but it would not budge. Frustrated, I buckled my head through the narrow opening to find out what was obstructed. What I saw made me blink twice to ensure that I wasn't hallucinating. A rusty pink bicycle locked to not only the railing of my front porch, but my door handle. The heavy-duty chain looped around both so that I couldn't even open my door at all. As I stood there in shocked silence, a woman stood on the sidewalk, arms crossed over her chest, staring at me with what I can only call smug satisfaction. "Excuse me," I yelled politely with increasing annoyance. "Is this your bicycle? I couldn't leave my house?" The woman walked over her attitude, radiating a sense of entitlement. She was in her late 40s, with a blonde bob haircut that shouted, "I want to speak to the manager," and designer glasses perched on top of her head on a cloudy day. "Yes, that's my bike," she said, her tone implying that I was somehow inconveniencing her by inquiring, I did not have somewhere else to place it. I indicated their vacant bike rack just 20 feet from our townhouse complex common area. "There's, to be honest, literally a bike rack there." She dismissively waved her hand. "Those are always full." They weren't. I could easily see from my doorway that the rack was vacant. "Look," I said, trying to maintain my cool. "I have to get to work. Could you unlock your bike so I can leave?" She tilted her head and gave me a patronizing smile. "This area is communal property. I have every right to use it. This is my front door," I explained, feeling like I was speaking to a child. "Not a bike rack." "Well, I don't see any signs that say I can't park here," she retorted. My patience was thinning. "If you don't remove it, I'll have to call the police." That's when she smiled, that self-righteous, smug smile that informed me she thought she had all the power. "Go ahead," she said, flipping her wrist down in a wave-like gesture. "I am the HOA." She pronounced those 3 letters as if they conferred diplomatic immunity and walked away, leaving me alone in my own house with no other choice but to climb out of my back window in an attempt to get to my meeting. Little did I know this was only the start of my nightmare with Karen the HOA president from hell. I'd been renting out my townhouse for about 6 months and had been successful in keeping below the radar of our homeowners association complex. I kept my grass tidy, my trash cans hidden, and essentially minding my own business. I'd heard rumors of the new HOA president, how she'd leave passive-aggressive messages on doors for things such as having a welcome mat that wasn't within the approved color scheme, or leaving Christmas lights up one day, past the specifically removal date. But I never dreamed of being the target of her childish office games that evening after swimming back into my window, a humbling experience for a 35-year-old career woman. I did find a notepad and wrote what I attempted to write as a polite message. "Please remove your bike from my door. This is not a safe situation and prevents me from having use of my own entrance." "Thanks," I handed the note to the bike's basket and lay in bed, considering any normal human would see what I did and correct it tomorrow. I found how wrong I was. Not only was the bike not damaged, but my letter was torn up and left on my welcome mat to encounter a more direct method was employed. I crawled out my back window once again and snuck over to Karen's apartment, which was only 3 doors from mine. I knocked gently and waited when she opened the door. Her expression immediately became hard on seeing me. "Yes," she said to me, her voice with irritation. "Hi, I'm Jordan from 3 doors down. I left a note asking if you would please take your bicycle from my front door. It's still blocking my entrance. And I really need to be able to use my front door." She leaned on her doorframe. "That entranceway is actually communal space," she said, like reading from an invisible rulebook. "Your lease only gives you rights to the inside of the outside, including the stoop. It belongs to the HOA, but it's holding me and from leaving my house," I had to remind her. still hoping to appeal to her sense of reason that I was coming to realize maybe didn't have. "You do have a back door, don't you?" she asked as she raised an eyebrow. "Yes, but then use that." She started closing her door, but I flipped my hand up to make it stop from closing, not moving towards the door, just expressing the idea that I wasn't finished. "Look, I don't want to blow this, but blocking a door is a fire hazard and it's illegal." She got up on her tiptoes, which was still a good 5 inches shorter than mine. "Are you threatening me?" she exclaimed, her voice rising an octave. "No, I'm just stating a fact," I responded quietly. "I'd appreciate it if you'd park your bike in the bike rack where it belongs." "If you touch my property," she said, holding a finger in my direction, "I will fine you for tampering with HOA-approved installations. That's a $500 offense." And with that, she slammed the door in my face, leaving me standing there in shock. Was this really happening? Could she really find me for swiped a bike, which was unlawfully blocking my own entrance? I wasn't sure, but I didn't feel like to test it. I made up my mind to let it slide one more day. Before reporting the issue to the authorities for 2 more days, I had to enter and leave my home by the back window, creeping over my kitchen counter, like some feline burglar in my own dwelling. Coworkers were starting to notice my constantly rumpled appearance in the office and clarifying that I was entering by windows since a middle-aged woman had locked her bike to my front door seemed too ridiculous to report on the 3rd day. I'd had enough when I returned home from work to discover the pink monstrosity still locked to my door. I called the non-emergency police number. The dispatcher told them they would send someone over to help work out the disagreement. While I waited, I sat on my back patio, in small rush of imagining Karen's face when confronted with real authorities. About 20 minutes later, I heard a commotion up front. I walked around to find 2 police officers standing by my door, looking at the bicycle situation, while Karen was waving her arms and talking at them. "This is HOA business," she was yelling as I walked up. "You have no jurisdiction here. This is private property governed by our bylaws." The officers, a man and a woman, both looked like they'd seen their fair share of neighborhood fights, maintained official expressions, even as Karen's tougher tone. "Ma'am," the female officer said, "regardless, HOA rules blocking someone's doorway is a safety violation under city code. Do you know who I am?" Karen repeated, her face reddening. "I am the president of this homeowners association. I determine what's allowed and what isn't." The male officer glanced at me. "Sir, is this your residence?" I hadn't yet replied. Karen cut in. "He's just a renter. He doesn't have the authority as owners. He's been messing with HOA property, and I'm going to catch him for it." That's when things took a strange turn. Karen suddenly ran off towards her unit. A few minutes later, she returned with bolt cutters and the officers, and I watched in amusement as she charged straight by us to my mailbox. "If he has a complaint about where I put my property," she seethed, putting the bolt cutters on the pole of my mailbox, "then let's see if he likes it when I rip down his contraband mailbox next this style." Never was approved by the architectural committee. The female officer stepped up. "Ma'am, I need you to put down that tool right away. Tampering with mailboxes is a federal crime." Karen stood still, the bolt cutters still in her grasp. "This is HOA property." She pushed on, but was less assertive in truth. The male officer said to me, "I'm going to have to hear some evidence of your credentials." As president of HOA, Karen's face changed from self-righteous indignation to something a little more desperate. "I've got that in my pocket. I'm the president." Everyone knows that. Then another of the neighbors, an elderly man, Mr. Chan, who lived on the courtyard opposite, approached our increasing number of officers. He said kindly, "I've resided there for 15 years and sat on the previous board. There has not been a legitimate HOA meeting or election in more than 6 months. The previous board fell apart after the previous president quit. Nobody appointed Karen to anything." Karen's face turned red, then white. "That's a lie. I've been collecting dues and passing rules for months collecting dues." Mr. Chen raised an eyebrow without an active board or treasury account whereabouts. That money bin on the officers exchanged a glance that made the other realize the situation had just blown beyond a simple argument over a bike. The female officer turned to Karen. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you once again to remove your bicycle from this gentleman's door, or else we will remove it for you." Karen tightened her grip around the bolt cutters. "I will not. This is my property, and I have every right, actually." The male officer jumped in. "You're already in violation of City Ordinance Section 212.5 of obstructing passageways, and perhaps in violation of several statutes of fraudulent pretense and receipt of money. If what this man is saying is true, what occurred was horrific and yet somehow utterly unavoidable." Karen had bolt cutters in her hands and screamed, "None of you have any idea how hard I work keeping this going without me. This complex would fall apart." The officers moved quickly. The female officer grabbed the bolt cutters, and her partner held Karen's arms behind her back. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for obstruction and disorderly conduct," he stated, putting handcuffs on. "You have the right to remain silent." As the officer recited Karen her Miranda rights, she began yelling about property rights, telling her she was going to take this all the way to the Supreme Court. And asking everyone's badge numbers, the female officer shouted for bolt cutters of their own to remove the bike, and my doorway was soon free. Karen was driven away in the police car, complaining still about being harassed, and how we would all come to regret this. And as the car drove away, people began flowing out of their houses. Drawn by the excitement, Mr. Chan explained to me what had happened, and a large number of residents attended, carrying on with their own Karen stories. It came to this: she'd been harassing the complex for months, insisting on authority. She hadn't been charging threatening fines. No one was ever even requested to pay, and locking up her bike to random porches down the street. When she realized she'd been claiming it was legal under some obscure community access statutes that no one had ever seen. Because as we now discovered, there weren't in the span of 7 days. The neighbors had held a legal HOA meeting. A new board was in place with Mr. Chan as president, and their very first unanimous vote was to exclude Karen from ever holding any position within the association. Again, as far as Karen's legal matters were concerned, they were much more grievous than anyone could have ever imagined. The illegal fines and dues added up to fraud charges, and apart from the disorderly conduct and resisting arrest, she was charged with serving jail time and thousands of real fines. When the judge read her sentence, 6 months probation, 200 hours of community service, and restitution payments to all she had fraudulently charged, her face twisted in horror and outrage. "But I was only attempting to maintain property values," she shouted as her lawyer pleaded desperately with her. The judge added a contempt of court charge on the spot, adding an additional $1,000 fine. Karen's mouth was agape in shocked shock.